the convent where the nuns vanished in Michoacán. High in the volcanic mountains of Michoacán lie the ruins of a Franciscan convent, sealed since 1651. The locals avoid the site at dawn, for they say that chants can be heard in a language neither Spanish nor Purépecha. It was there that 31 nuns vanished in a single day. Their habits were found perfectly folded on their beds, meals still warm upon the tables. Authorities at the time spoke of a kidnapping, but they never explained why their rosaries had been discovered fused into a strange octagonal stone, one that still glows with golden light every morning. Today, we will uncover Vatican documents that reveal why this stone should never have been unearthed. But before plunging into this chilling account, let me share something extraordinary. The first 2,000 subscribers to this channel will automatically enter a giveaway for a fully paid trip to Paris, where you'll explore the hidden secrets of Notre Dame that no tourist has ever seen. Imagine wandering through its underground tunnels, secret archives, and forbidden chambers where mysteries of centuries still linger. But now, let us walk into the shadowed halls of the Convent of Michoacán, where 31 nuns disappeared forever. To understand what happened in 1651, we must first look back to 1649. The viceroyalty of New Spain was restless, tensions smoldering beneath the surface. A century earlier, the Spanish crown had subdued the mighty Purépecha Empire. Yet in the most remote volcanic highlands of Michoacán, the ancient gods of fire and sun still seemed to whisper from smoking craters. Cultural resistance survived like embers beneath the ashes. Into this explosive setting arrived a religious order from Seville, the Sisters of Charity of St. Catherine. This Franciscan congregation was known for its extreme devotion and for enduring the harshest conditions. Their mission was unlike others, not simply to evangelize, but to establish convents on sacred indigenous sites, transforming pagan sanctuaries into Christian strongholds. Leading them was Sister Catalina of Jesus and Mary, a 32-year-old woman whose own life was as extraordinary as it was unsettling. Born into a noble civilian family, she had renounced her inheritance after what she described as solar visions during a grave illness in her youth. According to her spiritual autobiography, still preserved in the archives of Santa Clara in Seville, she claimed to have seen Christ himself appear to her, surrounded by a golden light that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. From that moment, she developed a fascination with peoples who worshipped the sun. For her, the mission to New Spain was not just evangelization, it was a personal quest for answers. Could divine revelation have been given through the sun to different cultures? Could solar rituals be a primitive but valid way of reaching the sacred? Her 30 companions had been carefully chosen. All were young, all deeply devoted, and all shared something peculiar: mystical experiences tied to light during their novitiate. Sister Maria del Carmen, only 19, swore she had seen angels woven from golden rays. Sister Isabel of the Conception, 23, claimed that the dawn light whispered secrets in languages she had never learned. Sister Teresa of the Sacred Heart, the eldest at 26, had been witnessed levitating during sunrise meditations. The site selected for their convent was no ordinary place. According to reports from the Viceroy, it was the most sacred ground to the natives of the entire region. A volcanic plateau at the base of Mount Jorullo, surrounded by pine and oak forests, regarded by the Purépecha as the dwelling of Tariácuaro, their god of fire and sun. To the Tarascans, the place had even deeper meaning. It was an axis mundi, where earthly fire met celestial light, a convergence of cosmic forces. Construction began upon pre-Hispanic Purépecha ruins, whose stone walls had endured a century of abandonment. These volcanic blocks, cut with a precision that defied European architectural logic, became the convent's foundation. Upon them rose the individual cells, each facing east to receive the first rays of dawn. A chapel aligned with the sunrise, a refectory, a library, and gardens of medicinal herbs. Yet at the center of the courtyard lay something far more disturbing. Partially buried under centuries of soil and plants rested a ceremonial stone known to the indigenous workers as the Tariácuaro, the place where the sun stands still. This was no ordinary stone. It was a golden-hued obsidian crystal, carved into a perfect octagon, polished to a mirror-like sheen. Each of its 8 faces aligned with precise astronomical points, and at its center was a hollow cavity that functioned as a remarkably accurate sundial. The Puripeka elders spoke of it with awe and fear. According to testimonies later collected by Franciscan chroniclers, the stone was not merely an astronomical tool but a spiritual portal. It was here that priests performed their most sacred and most perilous ritual, the death of fire. This ritual, known as Kurikawari Wanjua, was said to fuse a human soul with the essence of the sun itself, granting a form of immortality. But it was dangerous beyond measure. Years of fasting, meditation, and purification were required. On the exact calculated morning, the candidate would place their hands upon the stone as the first rays of dawn touched it. If successful, their soul would dissolve into solar light. If performed wrongly, especially during an eclipse, the soul would be trapped between life and death, neither human nor pure energy, forever. The indigenous workers repeatedly warned Sister Catalina. "That stone still sings to the sun each dawn," said their overseer, an old messenger named Tinsu. "If you awaken it fully, no power on earth will control what follows." But Catalina dismissed it as superstition. She ordered the stone covered with marble slabs from Mexico City and placed a towering cedar cross above it. Thus, the Puripeka solar altar became the very heart of the new Christian chapel, a decision that would prove fatally prophetic. On March 20th, 1650, the eve of the spring equinox, the convent was officially consecrated. The Bishop of Michoacán himself presided over the ceremony, accompanied by priests and colonial officials. Hymns rose toward the smoking volcanoes. Bells rang for hours, announcing that a new fortress of Christian faith had been established in the ancient land of fire. That night, the 31 sisters prepared to spend their first night in their new home. None of them could imagine that the very next dawn would carry them beyond the limits of human possibility, into a fate neither Christian theology nor Puripeka wisdom had ever foreseen. The first dawn, the dawn of March 21st, 1650, should have been the moment of greatest spiritual triumph for the Sisters of Charity. It was the spring equinox, a day of perfect balance between light and darkness. At 5:30 a.m., before the first hint of sun crept over the volcanic ridges, the 31 nuns gathered in the main chapel. The altar, built directly above the buried Tariácuaro, glowed in the flicker of dozens of beeswax candles. Sister Catalina had prepared a special homily on the light of Christ overcoming the darkness of paganism, a message she believed perfectly suited for this mission. But when the sun rose fully over the peaks of Mount Jorullo, something occurred that none of them had anticipated. The first rays of sunlight filtered through the eastern windows, designed in traditional Franciscan fashion to capture the morning light. When those rays struck the cedar cross above the buried stone, the wood began to vibrate, deeply, rhythmically, as though resonating with the very bones of the sisters. And then, the chanting began. At first, Catalina thought it came from outside, perhaps from indigenous farmers in the fields. But soon it became clear. The sound rose from the ground itself. A low, resonant hymn that made the stone altar hum like the strings of a vast instrument. The words were in Puripeka, a tongue none of the nuns knew beyond a few phrases. Yet the melody was unmistakably sacred. A hymn, an invocation, a plea to the rising sun. Kurikwari, Kurikwari, Taramu Yimbani, Karanakani Tembakwi, The syllables carved themselves into the sisters' minds as though written with golden fire upon their souls. The chant carried a complexity rivaling the most intricate motets of Palestrina, but its structure followed patterns unknown to European ears. Sister Maria del Carmen, the youngest at 19, was the first to feel its effects. She began trembling, not from fear, but from a strange spiritual exhilaration. Her dark brown eyes flickered with golden sparks, as though tiny suns had ignited within them. Then, without warning, she fainted. But her collapse was unlike any ordinary fainting spell. She did not fall heavily to the ground, but drifted downward like a feather, settling gently upon the stone floor. And though unconscious, her lips continued to move, whispering the Puripeka words of the chant filling the chapel. The phenomenon lasted exactly 7 minutes, until the sun had risen high enough that its rays no longer touched the cedar cross. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the chant ceased. Silence fell, heavy and ringing like the after-echo of colossal bells. Maria del Carmen awoke slowly, but when her eyes opened, something in her gaze was no longer the same. It carried a depth as if she had seen beyond the limits of the physical world. In a trembling voice, now strangely mature for her age, she whispered, "Mother, I have seen the place where the sacred fire is born. There are beings there, once like us, but now so much more. They showed me paths to the truth not written in our holy books." That evening, during the recitation of the Rosary, Sister Catalina noticed something deeply troubling. Several of her companions unconsciously hummed fragments of the morning's chant in Puripeka, even as their lips formed the Latin prayers. When confronted, they swore they had not realized they were doing it. "Mother," confessed Sister Isabel of the Conception, "I feel as though the sun planted a seed of fire within my soul this morning. It grows with every heartbeat. It is not pain, but neither is it pleasure. It is transformation. Days of transformation." In the days that followed, the chanting returned each dawn, always for the same 7 minutes, always with the same hypnotic intensity. And each day, more sisters experienced what had first overtaken Maria del Carmen: fainting, visions, and awakening with that strange golden depth in their eyes. But even more unsettling were the dreams. At breakfast, the nuns discovered they had dreamt the same visions. Vast golden cities of crystal, where luminous beings walked beneath a sun that never set. Temples forged of solid fire, where rituals fused Christian and Puripeka elements in ways that should have been heretical, but in the dreams, felt entirely natural. Sister Teresa of the Sacred Heart, trained in mystical theology at the Convent of Santa Teresa in Avila, tried to frame these events within orthodoxy. Perhaps, she wrote in her journal, God uses the symbols of this land to reveal new dimensions of His glory. Has He not done the same elsewhere, taking local traditions and transfiguring them into His truth? Yet her words did little to calm Catalina, for the Mother Superior herself was now seeing visions, sharper and far more disturbing than the vague dreams of her sisters. She saw the Tariácuaro uncovered, pulsing like a living heart of golden obsidian. She saw Puripeka priests performing ceremonies of impossible beauty, and, most troubling of all, she saw them not as strangers or demons, but as familiar reflections, versions of herself and her sisters, robed not in Franciscan habits but in tunics of fire, worshipping the same divine light they celebrated each morning at Mass. As weeks passed, the morning chant became the center of their lives. The sisters rose earlier and earlier, not from discipline but from an irresistible pull. By 5 o'clock they were always waiting in the chapel, hearts pounding with an eagerness that bordered on obsession. Catalina, desperate, wrote letters to the Bishop of Valladolid, describing the events as musical temptations of the devil and begging for an exorcist. Her handwriting grew shakier with each plea, her descriptions increasingly frantic. Compulsive behaviors, knowledge of unknown tongues, shared visions, unexplained physical changes. Symptoms any inquisitor would have labeled demonic possession. But the letters never reached their destination. Messengers vanished, trails mysteriously blocked by landslides that appeared and disappeared overnight. Meanwhile, the changes in the sisters became undeniable. They began fasting during the day, eating only at dawn when the chant was strongest. And even then, their food was strange, only golden fruits, oranges, peaches, apricots. They drank water left exposed to sunlight for hours. Their skin took on a subtle glow, as though the sun itself had seeped into their very cells. The effect was most visible on their faces and hands, which now seemed to shimmer faintly in dim light. Strands of their hair turned golden, glowing softly in the dark like threads of light. And their voices, during evening prayers, the sisters no longer sang traditional Gregorian chants. Instead, they harmonized spontaneously in new musical patterns, structures that mirrored the morning Puripeka chant. Their voices became impossibly pure, resonant, reaching notes beyond human range. The warning, the turning point came when Tinsu, an old healer from the nearby Puripeka village of Engawan, appeared one morning at the convent gates. He was over 70, once a priest of Kurikori during the final years of the Tarascan kingdom. His eyes, clouded by cataracts yet still piercing, filled with both reverence and absolute terror as he looked upon the sisters assembled in the courtyard. In halting Spanish, laced with Puripeka words that Catalina could only half understand, he spoke with trembling urgency. Sister of the foreign god, you have awakened the Tariácuaro. You feel its call, do you not? This is the stone where our ancestors learned the most dangerous secret of all, how to die in fire and live forever in the sun. His words struck Catalina like a blow. The old man gestured toward the chapel, his hands moving in instinctive ritual patterns. The chant you hear each dawn is not from evil spirits, as you believe. It comes from those who completed the death of fire centuries ago. Souls fused with the light of Kurikori, our Father Sunday. They now call to others, inviting them into the golden eternity. Then his tone shifted, growing desperate. But you must leave. Leave now before the cycle is complete. The death of fire takes months of preparation, and from the light on your faces, I see it has already begun. If you remain until the next eclipse, you will be trapped forever between worlds, neither alive nor dead, awaiting a release that may never come. Catalina wanted to dismiss his warning as superstition, yet deep within her, a part of her that grew stronger with every dawn, she knew the old man spoke truth. That night, for the first time since arriving at the convent, she could not sleep. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the Tariácuaro, not as a buried stone hidden beneath marble, but as a living crystal pulsing with the rhythm of the cosmos. The visions deepen. As the weeks passed, the convent's daily life transformed completely. Traditional prayers faded, replaced by hours of silent contemplation. From before dawn until well into the morning, the sisters remained in the chapel, faces fixed upon the spot where the sun's rays touched the cedar cross. During these long vigils, something extraordinary began to occur. The nuns reported that they could see through the marble, through the earth beneath, down to the hidden Tariácuaro. They described the sacred stone glowing with shifting colors, golden during the new moon, silver bright under the full. But even more unsettling were the figures. Translucent shapes, human yet not entirely so, robed in fire, moving around the stone in ritual patterns of astonishing mathematical complexity. Instinctively, the sisters recognized them as the ancients, those who had reached the light through the death of fire. Their movements aligned perfectly with the motions of the stars above. Maria del Carmen, whose transformation was progressing faster than the rest, became a medium for these visions. In her morning trances, she whispered with uncanny clarity, "They show us the path, but warn us of danger. The death of fire is not death, it is transformation. The soul slowly detaches from the body, month by month, until it becomes one with the light. But if the process is interrupted, especially during an eclipse, the soul remains conscious yet without form, neither alive nor dead." Her words sent shivers down Catalina's spine, though they also awakened a dangerous curiosity. Could these ancient rituals, dismissed as pagan superstition, actually be another form of divine revelation, one granted to the Puripeka long before Christendom arrived? The answer came from an unexpected place, the convent library. While reviewing books brought from Spain, Teresa of the Sacred Heart uncovered a manuscript by the German mystic Meister Eckhart. In it, he described experiences of union with the sun eerily similar to what the sisters were undergoing. He wrote of an uncreated light at the soul's center and of contemplative practices that allowed the spirit to merge with the divine radiance until the two became indistinguishable. Even more striking was a treatise by the Spanish mystic John of the Cross, who spoke of the soul thinning in God's light until transparent as crystal, so merged that one could no longer tell where the soul ended and the divine began. The parallels were undeniable. The sisters reached a liberating yet terrifying conclusion. Perhaps what they were experiencing was not heresy at all, but an advanced mysticism, one so rare that only the highest saints had ever glimpsed it. Perhaps the Puripeka rituals were, in some mysterious way, a providential preparation for this grace. Catalina's resistance began to crumble. If God had chosen to use the symbols and traditions of this land to lift her sisters into new depths of divine union, who was she to resist? The revelation of the stone. The final transformation began the morning Maria del Carmen rose before her sisters, driven by a force stronger than anything she had ever felt. The chant called to her, vibrating in every fiber of her being. With strength she should not have possessed, having eaten almost nothing for weeks, she moved the massive cedar cross that had covered the Tariácuaro since the convent's founding. What she revealed left her breathless. The Tariácuaro was no mere carved stone. It was a golden obsidian crystal, cut into a perfect octagon, its polished surface shimmering like liquid light. Complex astronomical engravings danced upon its 8 faces, shifting and moving as though alive under the rising sun. But most astonishing of all was the central cavity. It was no shallow hollow. Looking into it, Maria did not see darkness. She saw light, a golden radiance pulsing like a gigantic heart, its rhythm perfectly in sync with her own. As the first rays of sunlight touched the exposed crystal, the effect was overwhelming. The stone resonated like a great bell, shaking the entire convent. The tower bells rang of their own accord, keeping perfect time with the chant that thundered from the stone. And then, the surface of the Tariácuaro grew transparent, like water settling after a stone's fall. Maria gasped. Within it she saw a cosmos. Galaxies spiraled in golden light. Stars were born and died in moments, yet each moment felt like eternity. At the center of it all blazed a brilliance that should have blinded her eyes, but instead filled her soul with a knowledge beyond words. And their faces, hundreds, thousands of human faces, serene yet infinitely lonely, floating in the light. Men and women of every age and lineage, robed in living fire, their eyes shining like stars. They gazed at her with recognition, as though welcoming her onto the same path they had taken centuries, perhaps millennia, before. One face separated from the rest. A Puripeka man robed in fire, adorned with solar symbols. Without moving his lips, his voice echoed directly into Maria's mind. Sister of the new faith, you have found the path that unites all quests for the divine. The Tariácuaro is not a stone. It is a doorway where souls learn to exist as pure fire. Visions flooded her mind. She saw the true history of the stone, forged not by the Puripeka, but by a civilization far older, beings who had reached a spiritual evolution so advanced they could shape matter and energy with thought alone. The Puripeka had rediscovered it, crafting the death of fire ritual as a means to transcend the limits of flesh. She saw their successes, souls merging with sunlight, expanding into cosmic awareness. And their failures, those who attempted the ritual without preparation, left trapped in a half-existence, neither dead nor alive. Finally, she saw herself and her sisters. The ritual had already begun the moment they first heard the chant. Their souls were slowly detaching, preparing for the final transformation. But the fire-robed man warned, the next solar eclipse will be visible here in less than a month. If you complete the transformation before then, you will ascend. But if the eclipse overtakes you, you will join us in a form both beautiful and terribly lonely. When Maria returned to ordinary consciousness, she was not alone. All 30 of her sisters stood around her, faces radiant with awe. They had shared her vision. They had all received the same revelation. Catalina's voice broke the silence, more resonant now, tuned to the frequencies of the exposed crystal. She spoke. Sisters, we have been called to a path beyond all that we learned in Spain. We are prepared to follow it, knowing it may carry us past the boundaries of life and death as we know them. Their response was not words, but song. 31 voices rose in unison, blending Gregorian chant with the Puripeka melodies they had heard for months. The music vibrated the very stones of the convent, echoing as if from heaven itself. The transformation accelerates. The days following the revelation of the Tariácuaro became a whirlwind of visions, accelerated changes, and preparations for something none of the sisters fully understood, but all knew was inevitable. The knowledge they had received unfolded in their minds like photographs developing in a darkroom. Each day, new fragments of the ritual surfaced, not through study, but as if remembered from some ancient memory buried deep within their souls. Sister Teresa of the Sacred Heart became their chronicler. In her diary, later discovered centuries after, she wrote, Day 10, our bodies grow increasingly translucent. Sunlight passes through us as though we are living crystal. When I raise my hand to the dawn, I see bones and veins, but also golden lines of fire, like currents of energy, patterns unknown to human anatomy. Day 15. Fasting is no longer discipline but necessity. Solid food repulses us. It is as though our bodies are evolving toward a nourishment drawn directly from the light. We drink only water exposed to the sun, eat only golden fruits, and less with each passing day. Day 20. Our voices have changed so much that when we sing together, glass shatters. Flowers open instantly at our hymns. Yesterday, as we chanted, birds from the entire valley circled the convent, drawn to harmonies only they could truly hear. But the changes were not merely physical. The 31 sisters developed a form of telepathic communion, sharing thoughts, emotions, even visions without words. This mental web linked them also to the Tariácuaro itself, which acted like a vast psychic amplifier, magnifying their growing powers. Through this connection, they received increasingly precise instructions. The final stages of preparation required not only physical purification but the shedding of all earthly attachments, even their very identities, so that they might merge with the universal solar consciousness. Meanwhile, the locals of Michoacán began to witness strange signs. Shepherds grazing flocks near the volcanic slope spoke of luminous shapes circling the convent towers at night, weaving geometric patterns that matched no known constellations. Children claimed that when they played near the path to the convent, they heard angelic voices singing in a language both familiar and alien. Some children even began sketching symbols in the dirt, ancient puripecaglyphs they had never been taught. But the most disturbing event came when a delegation of civil and church authorities visited the convent to investigate the growing rumors. The delegation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The corregidor of the province, 2 Franciscan priests, a notary, and 6 soldiers. They expected to find a convent of nuns who had perhaps strayed too far into mystical excess, yet still redeemable through discipline and correction. What they found shattered them. In the main courtyard, the 31 sisters stood in a perfect circle around the exposed Tariácuaro. Their arms were raised toward the setting sun, faces aglow, but their bodies no longer entirely flesh. The light of the sun passed through them. Their forms shimmered translucent, like liquid crystal, casting shadows of golden fire instead of darkness. When the corregidor called out, none of the sisters moved. It was as though they existed in another dimension, visible yet unreachable. Fray Tomás de Jesus, one of the Franciscans, tried to touch Sister Catalina. His hand passed through her, as though she were made of solidified smoke. The notary, Diego de Montemayor, tried to document the sight, but his quill would not write. Ink evaporated from the page before forming letters, as though words themselves refused to describe what he saw. Then the singing began. The sisters' voices rose in a harmony unknown to human music, so powerful that the soldiers' teeth vibrated. The volcanic stones of the convent thrummed like colossal bells. The sound was both terrifying and unbearably beautiful, and several of the soldiers wept without knowing why. And then, as the sun touched the horizon, the 31 figures vanished, all at once, as though erased from existence, or like reflections in a mirror suddenly turned away. The courtyard was empty. Only the Tariácuaro remained, pulsing with golden light, brighter as the mountains fell into shadow. The delegation fled that very night. In his report to the Holy Office, Fray Tomás confessed, "I cannot say what we saw was the work of demons, for it bore a sanctity beyond any mystical experience I have known. But neither can I call it the work of God as we understand Him. It was something outside our categories, beyond our theology." The corregidor, once a practical man, resigned upon returning to Valladolid. He spent the rest of his life in an Augustinian monastery, seeking answers to questions he could never frame. Meanwhile, in the abandoned convent, the Tariácuaro continued its silent work, preparing for the day of the eclipse of 1651. On August 12, 1651, a solar eclipse darkened the skies over New Spain. Astronomers recorded it from Mexico City to Spain itself. Chroniclers described it as a dreadful omen, causing panic among indigenous villages and unease even among the most devout Christians. But in the volcanic highlands of Michoacán, 31 nuns awaited it with a serenity beyond fear or hope. By now, their transformation had advanced to a point where they were scarcely human. By day, they appeared like figures of liquid glass. At dusk, they nearly vanished, fading into silhouettes. Their voices had merged into a single harmony, a collective resonance that spoke as one, like the strings of a cosmic instrument vibrating in unison. They no longer ate. They lived on sunlight itself, absorbing it like plants, yet in a way infinitely more complex. Sister Catalina kept a diary in those final weeks. Her script grew thin and luminous, as though written in fire rather than ink. The names, the faces of our families in Spain fade like dreams at dawn. It is not loss, it is release. We are becoming what we always were in potential, fragments of the divine consciousness, returning to our true nature. 3 days before the eclipse, she wrote, The Tariácuaro shows us what we will be. Pure consciousness, flowing within the solar light, able to travel wherever the rays of the sun reach. We will join others who have ascended. Together, we will form a network of awareness across galaxies. And on the day itself, her last words, "This is my final entry as Sister Catalina of Jesus and Mary. When the sun shines again, I will no longer exist as an individual. I will be part of something infinitely greater. I am not afraid." At the moment of totality, the 31 gathered around the Tariácuaro. The sacred crystal pulsed violently, shaking the plateau itself. The engravings on its 8 faces moved like rivers of molten fire, aligning with the shadow of the moon crossing the sun. Then it happened. Instead of ascending into light as they had expected, the eclipse changed everything. The ritual twisted. Their bodies blazed with golden fire, but rather than dissolving into pure radiance, they flickered, appearing and disappearing like candles in a storm. Their forms, still recognizable as human, became unstable, made entirely of flame that refused to hold steady. Their faces revealed sudden, terrible comprehension. They had chosen the most dangerous moment to begin. Now they were trapped. Maria del Carmen's voice, echoing from multiple dimensions at once, was the last individual voice among them. "Sisters, we have made the mistake the ancients most feared. We began the death of fire during an eclipse. Now we are caught between worlds. We will not die, but neither shall we truly live." And as the shadow reached its peak, the convent filled with a blinding golden light. When it faded, the 31 nuns had not transcended, nor had they perished. They had become something else, beings of conscious fire, imprisoned in a limbo between life and death, anchored forever to the Tariácuaro. The crystal absorbed part of their essence, pulsing with their eternal presence. They had gained immortality, but not the one they sought. After the eclipse, when the eclipse ended and sunlight returned to the volcanic mountains, the convent appeared abandoned. 3 days later, explorers entered. What they found defied reason. The sisters' cells remained intact, their belongings arranged as though their owners might return at any moment. Prayer books lay open to the very pages they had been reading on the morning of the eclipse. In the kitchen, meals sat prepared but uneaten, strangely untouched by decay. But there were no bodies, no habits, no discarded clothing, no signs of struggle or escape. It was as if the 31 women had simply ceased to exist. The official reports, drafted by the new corregidor from Mexico City, spoke diplomatically of abandonment of the convent by unknown causes, and even speculated about possible abduction by Purépecha insurgents. But there was no evidence to support this claim. The viceroyalty, confronted with a mystery beyond explanation, chose the politically convenient version. The Vatican, however, reacted more severely. The case was immediately classified secretum pontificium under a rare category, solar heresy. All documents concerning the Sisters of Charity were locked away in the deepest archives of the Vatican, sealed with papal authority. Access was forbidden except by direct order of the Pope. The convent itself was closed. A stone wall was raised around the entire site, guarded permanently by soldiers with orders to arrest anyone who approached. Officially, the area was declared contaminated by toxic volcanic gases. But the locals knew the truth, especially the descendants of the Purépecha communities who had long warned about the Tariácuaro. For soon, strange sightings were reported. At dawn, during exactly 7 minutes, translucent figures appeared in the convent courtyard. Always 31, always standing in a perfect circle around the sacred stone. They were not ghosts, at least not in the traditional sense. They were the trapped souls of the nuns, caught mid-transformation, manifesting partially whenever sunlight recreated the fatal conditions of their eclipse. Shepherds lost in morning mist, travelers who wandered off course, soldiers who ignored orders, all spoke of the same vision. The figures emerged with the first rays of dawn, faint golden silhouettes that grew clearer until they were unmistakably present. Their faces showed perfect peace, yet infinite sorrow. They raised their arms to the rising sun, absorbing its light that sustained them, but never set them free. And after exactly 7 minutes, they faded, leaving only the Tariácuaro pulsing faintly with golden glow before falling dormant once again. Modern investigators who gained rare access centuries later reported inexplicable phenomena during these apparitions. Instruments failed. Cameras recorded only static. Radiation meters detected unknown energies. And the witnesses themselves? They described an overwhelming sensation of absolute peace, mixed with cosmic sadness, a feeling that haunted them for weeks. Many dreamed repeatedly of joining the Golden Circle, sharing the sisters' eternal fate, the prophecy of 2048. For more than 3 centuries, the Puripeka people have guarded the story. Generation after generation, they have kept meticulous calendars, waiting for a date long foretold. The next total solar eclipse visible over Michoacán. The year is 2048. According to their tradition, that eclipse will bring either release or eternal imprisonment for the 31 souls bound to the Tariácuaro. Some believe it will finally complete the interrupted transformation, allowing the sisters to ascend into the cosmic consciousness they once sought. Others fear the opposite, that the eclipse will seal their fate forever, binding them as immortal guardians of secrets humanity is not ready to bear. What is certain is this: every dawn since 1651, the sisters return. For exactly 7 minutes, they reappear in the courtyard, arms raised to the sun, sustained but never freed. Not alive, not dead, trapped in a moment that never ends. Modern anthropologists and physicists who have studied the site speak cautiously of living libraries of spiritual knowledge, preserved at the threshold of transformation. They exist in continuous meditation, aware, yet unable to change, waiting for a cosmic alignment that might never come. And so the legend endures. The search for the divine can lead us down paths that defy both religion and reason. The Sisters of Charity discovered that the boundaries between spiritual traditions are more porous than we imagine, and that some knowledge carries a price beyond life and death. What do you think of this story? Did the nuns find salvation, damnation, or something far more mysterious? Perhaps, when the shadow falls across Michoacán in 2048, the world will finally learn the answer.